trying to figure out sure. And if I picked them up, it would work for them.
Should I push the button again? Or? Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay, cool. We're good. All right. All right, you're right. The clock is fast. Okay, well, hello. Welcome to the October 25th Planning Commission meeting. And I lost Jackie too, sorry. I'm doing everything too fast tonight. I'm anxious.
Commissioner Thorson.
Present.
Commissioner Strauss.
Here.
Commissioner Will.
Here.
Commissioner Neverall.
Here.
Commissioner Hamilton.
Here.
Commissioner Berube. Chair Olson.
Here. Thank you, Jackie. Okay, so we have the agenda tonight. Were there any edits or additions to the agenda? Nope, seeing none. Take a motion to...
I move approval of the agenda as submitted.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Agenda is approved. Hey, Jimmy. Okay, so the next thing on an item is the approval of the October 11th, 2017 Planning Commission meeting minutes. Were there any edits or changes to these?
I move approval of the minutes as submitted.
Thanks. Is there a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, so we have 3 public hearings tonight. The first public hearing is an ordinance amendment allowing small wireless facilities and wireless support structures in public right-of-way. And who's presenting?
I can tee this one up. Thank you,
Okay, thanks.
Chair Olson, members of the Planning Commission. We have a couple of special guests with us this evening to present this ordinance. Tim Barnes, the city's facility manager,
Okay.
kind of oversees our rights-of-way and public facilities. And also James Monjay from Roger Knutsen's office, who has been working on this ordinance as well. So it's an ordinance that it's based on state law that allows small wireless facilities and structures within public rights-of-way. So we want to list that as a permitted use within the definition section of the zoning ordinance. So with that, I will introduce Tim Barnes, our city facility manager, and he'll present the ordinance tonight.
So I wanted to give some background tonight to the ordinance here, and I have on the screen. It all started a couple years back. We first heard from Washington at a city managers meeting as enhanced 911 calls are starting to increase around the country. The FCC decided that they wanted to create a means and a way that we could better track these calls. And I've listed some statistics here as far as the increase in the proliferation. And so after they passed the law to conform, a lot of the cell phone companies had to get on board and start to change their technology and find a way to meet and address this need. So first it started out as a 911 issue, but it's also data driven. You know, with the increase of our devices with data and our need for data and speed, et cetera, has even made the whole thing grow and intensify in what's happening. So we originally had, in the city of Edina, we had macro cell sites. And macro cell sites are giant sites that are on the water towers. We have about 4 water towers that have cell phone rentals on them. And then we have a couple guide leg towers that have cellular contracts throughout the city. And the reason why I'm talking about that is because that technology has to be coupled together with the small cell technology in a triangulation effect to increase the data coverage and to increase and enhance the 911 calls that they're looking for. So in the course of all this, who is affected? It turns out that, of course, the cell phone companies will have to change their technology. And then we as a city who own these contracts and the places where they're leased to, it affects us because we have to respond and find out how we're going to process this new type of technology and placement. So there were a lot of talk, a lot of negotiations. Like I said, it's been over the past 2+ years working with the Campbell Knutson law firm, from Roger himself to James and a couple other attorneys there, talking with other cities, City of Eden Prairie, Bloomington, finding out what they were doing, how they were reacting, and we thought we had it all wrapped up. We came up with ordinance, I think it was 2016-10, and we had this ordinance pass and brought it to council, and then the legislature in our state got together and decided that, well, there must be a better way. Let's put them all in the right of way. And so that changed the whole dynamic and picture for me and my work here in the city. And here's some of the examples of what we had. But this is what we were going to. So in the background of this picture is the macro site and kind of the light towers on top of streetlight structures that create that enhanced data that we're looking for in the small cell sites. And when they came out with this new statute to have the right-of-way open, at first there was a lot of concern because we were in the city trying to address aesthetics and safety and a number of other issues, and a lot of those concerns are, I guess, minimized in the new state law, and so we had to change our ordinance to come into compliance with that, and that's what brings us here tonight, to adapt and address different definitions that were put into the new ordinance change and different means of doing business. We'd had a whole structure laid out originally in the ordinance, a master license agreement and different things that were agreed to. And we actually had 7 small cell sites approved here and put up in the city. There's mostly around the Southdale area currently, and that was with Verizon as the carrier. And what we're expecting is that my phone is just going to be flooding with new requests once we pass this ordinance amendment. I already have 2 other companies that are knocking on the door wanting to get into our right-of-way, so we're anticipating an increase and influx of this throughout the city. Here's some of the current ones, like in Minneapolis, what they've been looking at, and then this is one of the examples I showed to the city council of what we wanted to stay away from. We didn't want to have 120-foot poles in a residential neighborhood or the historic district, for example, in different areas around town, walking out your door and seeing this 120-foot tower. So we've sought to have some control, have some governance, and some abilities to protect ourselves from that. I just threw this in as an example of the way they can hide and modify these towers. I don't think we'll see that anytime soon in the city of Edina, but I thought it was interesting to know for what's out there with the technology. And these are some of the locations. Here is 75th, I believe, in France Avenue, a location here in the city where they wanted to put up a small cell site. This is our York Avenue Fire Station. We have a utility building, and that light pole that's pointed to has already, in fact, been replaced with a small cell site. These are the diagrams that we got from Verizon, in the proposals. Another along, I can't remember, this is right around the Southdale area. That's been installed already. This is that one at the fire station. And so James and I got together after this ordinance was passed, from a statute rather, from the state, and he took hours and weeks to look at what we had, look at what the statute had stated from the state, and started to amend our whole ordinance. I brought him here tonight in case there were any questions or things more specifically that he could help address with the Planning Commission. So at this point, I'd like to open it up for any questions, or if you need anything deeper on this.
Great, thank you so much. Are there questions? Currently, no. No? Ryan?
Thanks, Mr. Barnes. So I had provided you and the city attorney some suggested edits to the ordinance. Could you just run down the changes that you think you'd like to make as a result of those, our conversation?
Yes.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Planning Commission. I did review Commissioner Nemirov's email address or email questions. I think there were a few clarifications we could make. One was related to clarifying where we were revoking a permit, that we were simply revoking the permit, not denying or revoking the permit. There was also a provision related to the 90-day automatic approval period that applied to all right-of-way permits. I think that would be a good change to clarify that the new state law has a 90-day automatic approval period for small wireless facility applications. But that 90-day period doesn't apply to excavation or obstruction permits, which are otherwise referred to as right-of-way permits. So I think we clarify that the city engineer would approve or deny the permits, but that the 90-day automatic approval period would only apply to the small wireless facilities. And I think we also clarified that the 3-day notice provision is simply a notice provision. It's not a automatic approval period.
Thanks. I would characterize these changes as relatively immaterial. I just wanted to have them on the record, everyone aware that there can be some small changes to the ordinance from what you had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a question. This is pretty basic, I guess, but can you clarify for us? So this is something that was passed. It's now a statute that these will be in the community. So what are we approving?
Okay, so the wireless telecommunication providers, Sprint, Verizon, AT&T, made a countrywide push to get access to public right-of-way for their facilities. And I believe this same type of law was before 18 other state legislatures this last legislative session. And the upshot of their efforts was that they have now been given access to put these small wireless facilities and wireless support structures, which are really like poles to hold their antennas, in the public right-of-way. It's a permitted use in the public right-of-way. Mm-hmm. They did that through the right-of-way management ordinance, which is why what you have in front of you has amended the right-of-way provisions of the ordinance, but they've also made small wireless facilities a permitted use in the right-of-way in all the zoning districts. So we had to amend the zoning ordinance to clarify that as well.
And do the providers then come to you and ask for permission? And are they paying you for that? Or how are you choosing what goes where and why?
They come to the city with a request to locate their small wireless facilities on either city structures or private support structures. The city then reviews their permit application. There's an application fee for that. And then they approve or deny the application. If the small wireless facility is to co-locate on a city pole, then they would pay rent for that facility or for each facility that they gain approval for.
Okay.
Commissioner Bennett?
Maybe also from understanding the purpose of these, it appears that they're just helping like triangulate for location. So they're bouncing off of the macro network or using that to triangulate. These aren't carrying or providing a cellular signal, right? It's just location purposes. Is that?
My understanding is it will help to cover some of the dead spots that the larger facilities aren't able to reach, either because of topography or distance.
So they're more perhaps boosters than location. Okay. I guess my question is, in section 1 where it's amended with the following fees and charges, as it's scaling up to the higher end, there's an either or, $182 per month, or the actual cost of the electricity if it exceeds that. Then we're getting to bigger structures, and it looks like it's up to the engineer to make. Is it the city engineer or the building official to make the call on if these structures start exceeding in capabilities and size, whether or not to permit those to change over time?
To answer the question about the fees are the statutory maximum fees that the city can charge. So state statute actually sets those fees.
Okay.
As far as the engineering review, that will be conducted by the city engineer based on the submittals of the provider, and they will take into account things like potential for interference, compliance with FCC regulations, that type of thing. So it'll be the city engineer that'll be reviewing.
Yeah, it's just like over time, this technology will improve, and perhaps they're going to try to, push for more enhanced systems in these locations. And it seemed like it was up to the judgment of the engineer if it's similar size or capability. Is it up to their judgment in case these things become more and more, say, of an eyesore or intrusion?
The ordinance contains the statutory definitions for what a small wireless facility is, and so they have to fit within those dimensional requirements.
Okay.
State law also permits them to replace their facilities with facilities that are substantially similar.
Okay.
So, that would be something that if they did replace the facilities, the city engineer would be looking at that and saying, are these substantially similar? The way the technology seems to be going is it's getting smaller, not bigger. So I guess one of the expectations would be that newer facilities would be smaller, but they would always have to fit within the dimensional requirements that are set out in state law and then again in the definition in the ordinance.
Okay, yeah, because there was the special exceptions section where, they could come to replace things if it's similar size, but, and they don't have to get a permit, so who is monitoring that? Are they making the call, or is it going to the city regardless?
So those provisions are taken out of state statute. That's what the state law requires. they are required to register as right-of-way users with the city, so the city would be tracking all the facilities in its right-of-way, and if there was a change, that would be something that...
All right, thanks.
Any other questions? I just had a quick question. So where we added the, what is it, 2I, saying that it's not going to exceed 50 feet in height. So I think that's kind of gets to your graphic where you showed the big one, the 120-foot one. Do we know if we'll get kickback from that? Or is that one, I know it's going to probably be smaller with the boxes now, but do you think we're going to get?
The state law sets the maximum height of new towers at 50 feet unless the city agrees to a greater height. So the only time you'd get a taller wireless support structure would be if they were replacing an existing
one
that's already higher than 50 feet.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so no more questions?
Can I ask one more thing?
Sure.
So sorry, I this seems really, I'm still confused on, you know, it says the reason for the proposed ordinance amendment is to comply with this new law, the state law. So this is a state law, so do we have a choice?
You do have a choice. The state passes a law that allows the city to regulate its right-of-ways. City doesn't have to do that. And there are some cities that don't have any right-of-way regulations at all. So in order to put the state statute into effect in the city, they have to pass the ordinance to do that.
Interesting, okay.
Okay. Well, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone from the public who'd like to speak? Is there a motion to?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Public hearing is closed. Any further discussion on this? Motion? Keep looking. Okay.
I move approval of the ordinance amendments, subject to the conditions outlined in the staff memo.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Oh,
Sorry, there will be some amendments, you understand, right? It's going to be modified somewhat from what you have. Okay. As long as the motion is at the as amended?
As amended.
Okay.
Right, correct. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. So all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, our second public hearing is a site plan review with parking variance, Simon Properties.
Sorry. There we go. Thank you, Chair, members of the Planning Commission. Before you, we have a site plan review and parking stall variance for the Shake Shack site I believe you're familiar with out at Southdale. Specifically, the northwest corner. As shown on the screen, you can see it's overflow parking for Southdale, and as probably parkers from the hospital or the medical facility to the north. Site zone plan, commercial district, PCD 3. So the request before you is a site plan review and just a parking space variance. So this project is code compliant with the exception of parking spaces. As we've seen in the past, any new project out at Southdale requires a parking stall variance. We look at the entire 80-acre parcel for the parking requirements. Question was raised by Commissioner Nemiroff a couple of days ago, and a very good question. Generally, so why are we granting variances every time that we do this? Why don't we just change the code to better get a handle on regional malls? An excellent question. And really, I think we've chosen to do it this way over the past 20 plus years. It's just the ever-changing uses out at Southdale for a regional mall. You know, we could go through a study and take a look at what the parking regulations might be, but in 10 years it might be completely different. So the approach that we've taken is let's do an individual study based on the uses that are out there and are they providing enough parking. So that's kind of the general strategy that we've taken. Something that we could consider as part of our work plan if we wanted to take a closer look at regional malls. So I just kind of throw that in as a little background. So the applicant has been through the sketch plan process. The iteration that you see on the screen was their first go at it. As you can see, they had the loading dock on 66th Street. They've made a number of changes. This was the plan that was reviewed by the Planning Commission, where they took that loading area and moved it to the south. They added green space, added in pedestrian crossings. This is a rendering of the building. So they haven't made a lot of changes from the sketch plan review in terms of the building itself. They have made a number of revisions from the site plan. So since the sketch plan, they've added almost 1,000 feet of sidewalk space. There was a lot of question about safety and pedestrian movement, so they've tried to address that as best they can, and they'll go into that in more detail as part of their presentation. The parking field along France Avenue has been moved back to try to meet that 50-foot setback that we want to accomplish with the Greater Southdale Area Plan, and they've moved the building back just slightly from the road as well. So this is their proposed pedestrian network. So some of the additions from sketch plan, the most significant is this sidewalk along here. That would provide a connection to both France and 66th. They've added this link. Currently there's no sidewalk here, so this would be a nice improvement to bring people from across the street into Southdale. This connection along here provides an access to an existing sidewalk this way and also this way. So this is the rendering of the building itself. Again, that hasn't changed much. This would be what it would look like from the corner, as if standing on France looking into Southdale. So when looking at the site plan itself, access to the site remains the same. Probably the most significant change is currently the ring road is one way in this direction here. This will become two-way from the intersection off of France. But otherwise, accesses are generally the same. There will be a slight shift here, green space added in this area. Traffic study was done by WSB and Associates. Tony Heppelman is with us this evening. The conclusion is the existing roads can support this project. It's not a significantly large building, so no issues with the traffic. One thing that was noted by the city engineer and the traffic consultant is in regard to this right-in only off of 66th. The concern being if this starts to back up toward the France intersection, could cause some problems there. If that does occur, the county would require this access to close. And so the nearest into the site would be at the stoplight here. And they would have to turn, this is a one-way segment, that would have to be turned back to two-way. So that's something that the county would monitor, and should that become a problem, they would have to close that right in. In terms of landscaping, based on the perimeter of the site, they would need 31 overstory trees. There's about 50 proposed here. Of note, there are some pine trees that are existing along the corner. Those would all be removed, but they would be, again, replacing 46 overstory trees with a number of understory plantings. In terms of impervious surface, this was a good question raised by the chair earlier this week. You know, what is the comparison of impervious surface from what's there today to what's proposed? So there's actually going to be an increase in green space with this project. This is the existing conditions. So you can see the green space. And as proposed, this is the trail over here where we're losing that green space but gaining a sidewalk. So there is an increase of about 6,700 square feet of additional green space from what's there today. In regard to signage, that question did come up, I believe, at sketch plan, and the proposed signs are code compliant. You noted on that elevation that maybe I'll just go to it. Note that the signage along this this portion of the building. So the way the code reads, it's 15% of the wall can be utilized for signage, but we just look at it as if it's a 2D image, just a flat surface. So the way that sticks out, we wouldn't count this as just a wall in itself. For the wall space, we would count the entire wall that faces that side. So the proposed signage is at about 7 or 8%, so they're actually less than what our code allows. So the signage is code compliant. Again, all the building setbacks are met. The only variance is in regard to parking stalls. So that's our primary issue for consideration, and staff believes that the parking variance is justified here. Again, WSB has done a parking study, and they've based it on all of the uses over the entire Southdale area, and that would include with the JCPenney's closing and Lifetime Fitness coming in. So the parking calculations are all based on the existing uses or soon-to-be uses on the site. And the study concludes that they would still operate with an excess of 334 stalls. Again, in 2001, the first variance was granted for Southdale. That was the addition of the movie theater and some of the restaurants, about 750 stall variance. Then when Southdale 1 Apartments was built, another variance was granted. With the hotel on the northeast corner, another variance. And then again with Restoration Hardware. And so again, each time a variance was granted, a specific study was done. The alternative would be, there's plenty of room on the site to put up a parking ramp or a structured parking if they really needed it. So that would be the alternative to the variance. You could see it as a proof of parking should they need that. Again, that wouldn't be necessary based on the parking study. So in conclusion, staff would recommend approval of the variance subject to the findings and conditions that are outlined in your staff report. And with that, I can stand for questions.
Thank you, Carrie. Are there questions? Commissioner Strauss.
Dr. Tig, did the small area, the Southdale small area group, did they have a review or did they comment on the parking request here?
They have not. So the working group, they don't have review authority over projects. So whether it's this or the Estelle project or any of the recent, they don't have a review role for specific projects. So to answer the question, no, they haven't had a...
Do you believe that the request is consistent with their positions as they...
Well, it's consistent in regard to, they're meeting that 50-foot setback that we're trying to accomplish. In terms, I think the work group would say there could probably be a bigger and better use for the site. A little bit more density, maybe some more height. So yeah, a small-scale restaurant is probably not in that vision plan. But again, it's code compliant. It's a use that's allowed within this zoning district.
Thank you. Other questions for? Go ahead. Thank you.
Thanks, Carrie. Could you walk us through a little bit more about the pedestrian safety issues and maybe discuss what kind of tools are available to ensure that, or not to ensure, but to enhance pedestrian safety? I mean, everybody always comes up with, oh, well, speed bumps. I'd rather not do speed bumps, but I'm sure there are other tools in the toolkit that people can use to make sure pedestrian safety is addressed. And maybe if you could just walk through this and talk about other things that could be done to enhance pedestrian safety.
Sure, and I think that feeds into a principle of the Greater Southdale Area Working Group too. It's how does this site fit into the area and how do we move people through the site? So I think this plan has done a pretty good job of that. Along France Avenue, there would be the new connection here. So these pedestrian connections would be separated from the traffic area, from where the cars are moving. So along here, again, we would have this pedestrian connection that could get people across 66th and into Southdale without having to just walk through the parking lot. So they could come within this area here, again, grass on both sides, come across. And this is an existing pathway along the back of the curb and in toward Macy's. Another alternative, if they wanted to stay even further away from the traffic, they could continue along here. Again, there would be grass on both sides to this crosswalk. This is an existing sidewalk that would get you into that same area. And also off of France, providing a better pedestrian connection with this new sidewalk with a couple of alternatives. This would be walking through the existing parking lot, but if they wanted to avoid that, someone could come up here into this area that is separated from the traffic area. Oops. And then again, coming across 66th at the corner, they would provide access. A pedestrian could walk around in this location. Again, they would have to cut across the parking lot in this location. If they wanted to avoid that, I guess they could just continue on that way. This sidewalk also does provide a cut through for someone who's out walking around the area. If you wanted to not walk to the corner, you could cut through this location here.
For those two diagonal, starting from the bottom right and moving up towards the restaurant, going through the parking lot and walking across the interior road, the interior loop road, I'm sure that Simon, as much as or more so than anyone, doesn't want any pedestrians to be hit walking across there. I mean, are there any particular steps that have been taken for those two crossings to make them particularly safe?
I believe this one might be striped today, but again, they would have the markings in the crossroad. They would provide the markings here as well. I believe, this would be new sidewalk markings across in those locations there, so that clear pedestrian connection across the drive surface.
All right. Thanks for answering.
Any other questions for Carrie? And down there? No? I just have a quick one. So you know how we're proposing a two-way? And we did that with the hotel too, right?
Correct.
Have we looked at the whole site, just making that, two-way, or do we just kind of want to keep it piecemeal like that, or is that confusing?
I think our preference would be to have it two-way, but again, it's private property. It would be a question for Simon.
Okay.
As development occurs, it's becoming more and more two-way. And again, as I mentioned, if this right-in closes, this one-way would be turned into two-way, at least in this segment.
Okay. And then, so we did have a traffic study performed, correct? And
Correct.
Did I can ask them that question too. Should I ask them that question now?
Sure.
Are
Yep,
there
Tony
other questions?
Hepelman is here from WSB.
Okay. Any other questions for Carrie? Okay. Oh, you got a question? Sure, go for it.
Would the Shake Shack parking space be available for people going to the mall or like the hospital?
Well, I'm not sure if that's really available for people at the hospital today. That might be a question for Simon. I see people using it, whether they're supposed to or not. It would certainly not be as convenient. I would imagine that these would be some of the first stalls taken for people that are using the restaurant. But there would be a shared parking access, again, with the entirety of the Southdale site. It's all, in a sense, shared parking.
Great, thank you, Carrie. So I do have a question for the traffic. Should I do that before the applicant comes up, or is? Sure. Yeah, why don't we do that? Hi.
Hi, Tony Heppelman with SSB.
Thank you. So you probably heard my question, and as part of your, as you're looking at these sites and looking at the two-way and the one-way, have you looked at how that works together? I mean, are we seeing where there might be conflicts, having a piecemeal like that we should be looking at a bigger picture?
Right, so we, in our traffic study, did look at the access off of 66 into the Ring Road as well as off of France Avenue and onto France Avenue from the Ring Road. And then we looked at the intersections on France and also 66th Street as part of the traffic study. And those, the analysis shows, are going to operate all at a very high level of service. We rate it from A to E or F, and these Ring Road intersections would be operating at an A. Now, part of at one time, the Ring Road there was two-way and it was converted to one-way, and the trade-off between the two is that the one-way is better in terms of getting people onto and off the site and moving people around the site. And what you get into, though, as you start to develop the perimeter is that it gets, and because on the mall itself, you don't necessarily have to get to a specific point on the mall, and you can use the external road system to get there. Or you go in the building and walk through to get to your destination. On the external sites, though, like where the restaurant is going, if you don't have the two-way system, now you have to travel a whole lot farther to get to the site, and that's kind of the reason that as that perimeter develops, the two-way system makes more sense, because it makes it easier to get to that particular site. I think over time, you're right that it probably is going to start leading to confusion in terms of what's one-way, what's two-way. In a specific corner, I don't know that happens yet, but as more perimeter development happens, I think is going to be a point where might need to start looking at that. We didn't look specifically at whether it should be a one-way or two-way system, though.
Thank you. Got a question?
Do we have any statistics? Have there been any car pedestrian accidents at the interior of the Southdale property over the last several years? Do we know?
I don't know.
There may be. I'm not aware of what those are, though.
Yeah,
okay.
we didn't specifically, as part of this traffic study, look at crashes so I don't know the answer as to whether how many there are.
Do you think that, or do you know whether one-way or two-way vehicular routing is safer? Which is safer for pedestrians?
Well, a lot of it is dependent on volume and speed. When you have just one-way traffic, though, pedestrians only have to look in the one direction versus watching for traffic from both directions. But as the volumes go up, there's kind of that trade-off, and it's somewhat case by case in terms of what the best situation would be. I think the volumes in this particular corner are not that high that it's going to be that difficult for pedestrians to cross, and there's good sight lines and stuff, so that pedestrians and vehicles should be able to see each other in this location.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. All right, now the applicant, are they here to present? I've never seen the applicant all sit in the back row like that before. Come forward.
We were expecting more people here tonight.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Cliff Pointer. Good evening. I'm with Simon Property Group, the owner of Southdale Mall. Very excited to be back. I well, I guess what I want to start with, what we did after we left. The meeting last time took a lot of good feedback from all of you, and some few that are missing now. Went back, thought long and hard about where the direction the project was heading. Wanted to make sure that we were doing our best to deliver the kind of project that would represent this corner well in the city. And I feel we've made some nice additions. I know Kerry hit a lot of them in his presentation. I think the addition of the pedestrian network is a big one. I think that's a huge part to this corner. It's now easy to flow through the site and connects with the mall 3 or 4 different ways. The connection down to, I believe that road is Drew. Is that that's the next road down? Is I think going to help not only people get to the Shake Shack site, but navigate the entire city. We did spend a lot of time looking at the crosswalks. Very concerned about that. We had the county reviewed them extensively. We especially along the approaches there. The city engineers taking a hard look at it. Our consultants have taken a lot of hard look at it. And I know WSB also took a hard look at it. And we feel comfortable with where we're at. And yes, I am sure, I'm not privy to the numbers of pedestrian vehicle accidents on the Southdale property. I'm sure it happens, just like it probably happens at a lot of retail establishments around the city and the country. But in addition to what Kerry said about the striping, we've also, the main focus of what we'd like to do is we'd like to drive people to, can I touch this? To this crossing here will be our main focus, and we've taken some extra steps there, including the sight lines that Tony was talking about, along with we've accented the side of the walk with some plantings to sort of differentiate so people know something's coming up, but we've kept those plantings low to keep sight lines clear. And we've also added some pedestrian crossing signs there, so people are well aware that there's a crossing there, and that's we feel will be a very safe crossing. The addition of speed humps and unneeded stop signs are always thrown out, or at least suggested when we have these types of mid-block crossings. In our experiences, they're not typically what typically will happen when people start ignoring them. Speed humps are usually issues with the fire department to slow things down, and it also drives people to the inner ring road where we don't want them. So we'd like to kind of try to avoid those wherever unless absolutely necessary. But it's certainly on the table. Talk a little bit about there was a question about the shared parking. Yes, we have an entire property shared parking. Everyone is open to park anywhere they want to. You can park at Herberger's, and you can walk to Shake Shack. The hospital and we have a good working relationship with them. I know in the past, especially when that deck was under construction several years ago, we took some parking from them and allowed people to officially park on our property. I know it still happens. I'm hoping that when this corner develops, people don't see this as a hospital parking lot anymore. We may have an issue. If we do, that's something we'll deal with an operationally, with its, maybe it's some towing signs or something like that, if it's absolutely required. A few cars here and there ain't going to bother anybody. Let's see, we talked about, and then the two-way traffic. Yes, it is not ideal, the situation that's going on there right now. We have we sort of a piecemeal thing that we're going around and doing the park or the two-way traffic as we're trying to redevelop areas. I know that it's a very exciting time out there right now. I don't know if you've driven by, but even this week that the RH is starting construction, the Restoration Hardware Corner is starting construction. As we keep getting our fingers into the mall, we want to make sure we do things right. And unfortunately, projects of this scale, to get two-way traffic around this entire mall would require significant entrance modifications to every entrance, well, except for the ones that have already been touched. And, unfortunately, a project like this just can't, financially support it, although that's not a reason to make something unsafe. What we're doing is we're providing a safe and effective means of people getting on and off the site, keeping people safe, and doing it in a way that makes sense to us and keeps us viable. And with that, I just want to, we have the architectural team here tonight, along with an operational folks from the Mall of America franchise location, who could answer any questions about hours or anything like that. We also have the civil engineer here tonight, and happy to answer any questions about that. So with that, please.
Thank you very much. Okay, so open it up for questions for the applicant. Are there any questions? Go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for responding to our feedback. Everything looks awesome, from the site plan development and the addition of the sidewalks and connectivity. Not often do we get a lot of enhancements after we talk the first time, so this is awesome. The only question I have, and you kind of addressed it, but maybe I'd like to just understand a little bit more about the particular location of the entrance off of 66th. And it just looks a little convoluted to me, just visually, so I'm sure it'll be kind of like that to experience. Is there any consideration to make that entrance closer to a 90-degree turn to slow down the cars coming in? And maybe could you speak to, what is their sightline as they're coming around more of a rounded corner and someone's trying to cross that near crossing versus slow them down with the geometry? And then what that could do is, if this does turn to a two-way, it allows a point of egress from a west traveling vehicle to, you'd have to modify that location yet again, so.
Yeah, it would definitely require, if we wanted to get access from the west, we'd have, or a westbound vehicle, we'd have to probably push them down to Drew, and then make the entire thing two-way. I don't think a full approach, but looking at the entrance, it is unusual what we're proposing there. It is I feel a good answer to a difficult question. We have some grade challenges as well that aren't really showing up on our plans. If you've been out to that site and been through that entrance, you'll know it goes up a couple of feet. It's a bit challenging to get an ADA compliant crosswalk in there in a location that's safe. Typically we would try to push that down towards the road, but we feel that having it up inside the site in case cars do, give more chance to cars to see pedestrians, so they'll have more time to stop if one were to get caught in the crosswalk. So I know that it's not ideal, but we've spent a lot of time looking at it. And we've had some of the best minds in the city. Not only WSB has looked at it from a traffic perspective, but we've also had our consultant Kimley Horn, their traffic engineers, look at it and review it heavily. They feel it will work and be quite functional and safe.
Yeah, I think it's more the geometry, if there's an option to slow cars down more on that. It just looks like a pretty smooth turn for someone to pull, and pedestrians have their back if they're moving eastward to that traffic. And I don't know what kind of signage could alert someone that quickly that, hey, there's a pedestrian crossing right here. And maybe there is, and that's just what I wanted to understand.
Well, we certainly could take a look at adding some signage there. That's something we could take a look at for sure, if there's something that could help.
Yeah, I was just curious. It looks challenging, so I just wanted to understand.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll take another look at it.
Thank you. Other questions? Commissioner Strauss?
Mr. Point, so on 66 at the entrances we're talking about, drive that lane to come in, that's just a queuing, that's just a dedicated lane. That doesn't go, that's not a traffic lane going through, right? So I mean, there's 2 full traffic lanes and then a lane that allows you to make the right into the property?
There is one turn-off lane, or one right-hand or right turn only lane,
Okay.
a deceleration lane, if you will.
Yeah, and that is not a through lane, so.
Right, so you have, once you get in that lane, you have to come into our
So that
site.
is a line that will allow cars to queue.
Yes.
Coming through there, and I don't know what that distance is, but I would imagine it's several cars.
Our calculations show it'll work
Okay.
just fine. The, county's concerned, of course they are, it's their road, we understand that. They've put that condition in their approval, which we're, willing to live with, don't love it, but we're willing to live with it. If it's a problem, we'll solve it, or we'll move it.
Okay. And that is Hennepin County's, they'll follow through on that. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? I have a couple. So how are you signing or indicating the transition between the one-way and the two-way on this system?
Oh, that's a good question. I studied some, but not enough to answer that one. I will defer to our civil
thanks.
engineer for that one.
So my name is John Libby with Kimley Horn, and I think what I'll do is pull up our site plan. It shows a little better without the aerial how the configuration is. There it is. So northbound traffic coming on the ring road, it would be clear with the island here that these left 2 lanes will take you out to France. As you continue to the north, what we would likely do is have additional signage in this location here where I'm pointing that would identify two-way traffic. So coming back north, I would envision us to have at the stop sign additional indication of one-way traffic at that point. Coming out of this intersection here, which is actually to the truck tunnel, there may be signage at this location indicating two-way traffic on the ring road. And then southbound, coming off of 66, you would have, it would be clear here that you have 2 options. As Cliff pointed out, there may be some additional signage that we may want to consider for pedestrian indications there. And then as you're coming southbound on the ring road, you would be diverted out towards France just through the curbed island there.
And for two-way traffic, we would have a yellow, we would use a yellow center line, which is the, the standard denunciation of two-way traffic.
All right, thank you. And then also just talking about parking on the site, when we see the full aerial, I just always see a sea of parking. So I'm always pitching if we could even reduce more parking on this site. And I'm throwing this out before knowing if the city would be comfortable with that, but I just, it's all signs are indicating that there's going to be less parking and more autonomous and the Ubers and the Lyfts. And so I would, offer my opinion is to consider even reducing the number of stalls and using because I just don't ever see the parking stalls really filled kind of across. Now I've got more people crossing, so I know what I'm saying with that. But I just still see a lot of parking on your site. And then I guess as far as the signage for the pedestrian and for the two-way and one-way traffic, if possible, I don't know, when would this be in front of the council? Carrie?
It would be at their, Were we going to do the 8th?
The 8th, I
Yeah,
think.
November 8th.
Okay. Do you think you'd be able to have a signage plan, a little bit more detailed signage plan in time for that to present?
Absolutely.
Okay. Are there any other questions for the applicant? Quiet group. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So this is a public hearing. I'd like to open it up if there's anyone from the public who has any comments. Seeing none.
Motion to close the public hearing?
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Nope. All in favor? Aye. So I'll bring it back to the Planning Commission for comments. Any comments? Commissioner Nemiroff.
I'd like to make a couple of comments. Well, first of all, with regard to traffic studies in general, and this one also, I'm increasingly thinking that we're talking as a city about becoming a multimodal transit community, yet whenever we discuss traffic, it's all cars and parking. And being a multimodal community requires much more than just putting up bike lanes. It's a cultural shift, and it's also thinking about bikes, the bikers thinking about pedestrians, and I would like to encourage us to bring them to the forefront whenever we do traffic studies or site studies for the impact of changes. We will never be a multimodal transit community if we don't change the culture first and the thought processes first. So I think to make changes regarding one-way or two-way without really having firm data on the pedestrian safety is a mistake in this day and age. It's omission. It's willful omission of an important fact. So that's my first comment. My second comment is with regard to the property itself. I am going to, subject to the review of the transit and the pedestrian, I will be in favor of this proposal for the following reasons. One, we don't need a sea of parking at Southdale anymore. And two, the landowner has the right to use their property as they see fit, subject to reasonable variances, and the parking is reasonable variance. That said, I think that the community is not the people that like eating out are going to be happy about this, but I think a lot of members of the community are going to be disappointed that there's a Shake Shack going in on that corner. And I think I'm just bringing this, get the elephant or the, in this case, the cow out in the middle of the room. And I think we need to acknowledge that this is going to be disappointing to people, except when they're enjoying food at Shake Shack. So, but I will be nonetheless voting in favor because it is, you have the right to use your property as you wish, provided you comply with all reasonable ordinances.
Thank you. Any other comments? I would just add that I kind of agree, well, totally agree with what Commissioner Nemiroff just said. I'm going to vote in favor of it too, but I also would like to have seen something more intense on here. So it's kind of opposite what we just had with the other development on the west side proposal, and this is kind of where we want to see that intensity. So agree that we really need to keep going with the pedestrian and the multimodal and look at being a little bit even more creative with the parking, and concerned about that two-way. And that's it. Motion?
I move approval of the site plan review and parking variance subject to the conditions outlined in the staff memo.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Is there a discussion? Okay. Can I do a friendly amendment? Could we ask that they provide signage, a detailed signage plan and more information on pedestrian crossing and one-way, two-way?
That's acceptable.
Okay, thank you. There's a motion. Okay, take motion. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And passes. Thank you. Okay, so the last public hearing is the subdivision for Market Street, preliminary plat.
Okay, thank you, Chair, members of the commission. Before you, we have a preliminary plat. Subdivision, although we're not really dividing property here, we're more combining. So this is the Market Street project up on what was known as 49th and a half Street, now Market Street. As you can see on this graphic, the site exists today. It's the middle parking ramp and the north parking ramp and a couple of city-owned properties on the edges. It's 5 parcels on the south and 4 on the north. What the proposal here is to simplify all the legal descriptions. In fact, 49th and a half Street is not even a platted street. There's an easement there where the street is located. So now it's going to be a formal right-of-way. Much cleaner legal descriptions, Lot 1, Block 1, the north parcel, and Lot 1, Block 2, the south parcel. So it's really a combination, simplifying the legal descriptions. There's no changes to the project that's already been approved. They're in for building permit right now. Just to refresh your memories, there's a look of the project that was approved. So it's really just to clean up all the legal descriptions. So with that, I would recommend that you recommend approval of the preliminary plat subject to the findings and condition. We need to vacate some of those existing easements. That would go to the city council the same night as the plat. Those easement vacations, it's a public hearing before the city council. So with that, I can stand for any questions you might have.
All right, thank you, Carrie. Are there any questions? So I just have a quick one. So ownership under both of these now, is that all the...
Currently, it's all city-owned property.
Okay. Great. Any other questions? Okay, hearing none. This is a public hearing, and I don't know, is anyone hiding behind them? No? So motion to...
Motion to close the public hearing.
Is there a second? All in favor? Aye. So bringing it back to the Planning Commission, are there any questions, comments? Hearing none, I'm looking over here.
Motion to approve the recommendation for the plat of the Edina Market Street as outlined in the staff memo.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Motion approved. Thank you. All right. So do we have any reports or recommendations? Nothing? Correspondence? Chair or member comments? Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I got a small one. So, and I don't know when this occurs, but in our packets every meeting, we get the minutes of the city council meeting and the most recent city council meeting, but it just dawned on me after like several years of being a member of the planning commission, that the city council often meets more frequently than we do. And so I'm wondering if there should ever be 2 sets of minutes in our packet, or you know.
You both meet twice a month. There might be an occasion where we don't have a meeting. Then they're going to get a little ahead of you, but you have the same number of regularly scheduled meetings as the council.
I guess I had another question then with that regard. Is there anything you'd like to share about the council meeting regarding the Estelle? Or am I jumping the gun on the agenda? I think people here are interested in...
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, I was going to mention that on my comment, so we could go to that. Yeah, so the city council on a 4-to-1 vote did deny the comprehensive plan amendment. The discussion, you know, it was long, just like it was here. I think there were a few more, both for and against the project, so we had a lot more public testimony given. It was very civil, just like it was here, well-run public meeting, but the city council did, again, on a 4-to-1 vote, voted against the amendment. I'm not sure exactly what Ryan's going to do with the property. I'm getting calls, people who are interested, so I don't believe we're going to see a revised proposal by Ryan Companies.
Yeah, what was like their reasoning for that decision? What seemed to be the overarching?
Yeah, I think the main reason is the height in such close proximity to the residential area. You know, as our comprehensive plan talked about, that's a transition area from the east side of France to the west side. So that whole area is described as that transition area. And I think, well, the majority, the supermajority of the council just felt that was too much height within that transition area.
Thanks, Carrie. So when you're saying you're getting calls, people asking you what's happening, or calls from other people who are interested in that property?
People who are interested in the property.
Cool.
So whether they've had connections or contacts with the property owner, that I don't know.
I was just going to jump up back to the chair and member comments. So Southdale Working Group is getting back. Do you want to give a little update on that?
Yes, we had the city council approve the contract to move ahead with the consultants. So it'll be a combination of the BECO group. Dan Cornejo is going to be kind of the lead planner on that, but AFO will still be involved, Mick Johnson, to provide guidance all along the way. So we will have our first meeting of the work group next Monday evening to get that process started. So over the rest of this year and into next year, we hope to move right along with the Greater Southdale Area Study as part of the comprehensive plan.
A lot of catch up to happen. Are we talking weekly to catch up, or is that, I know at one point they were talking about, look at me, I'm like, weekly?
Yeah, so we'll talk about that next week.
Okay.
There is talk of the members of the work group meeting on a weekly basis. Mm-hmm. There might be more formal meetings every other week. I think it's all somewhat up in the air at this point, so we'll have that discussion next week.
And so that will be on the website to, if people are interested, they can follow like when, okay. Great. Any other? Commissioner Bennett?
I'd just like to keep everyone updated with the 44th and France small area plan. So we met a week ago Monday, and Carrie was there to kind of speak about all of the working parts of small area plan, comp plan, speak right to the height and the issues that have been raised and things to consider going forward for this small area plan. And I felt, and Sheila can weigh in too, I felt like the meeting went very well. It was an open house style. We took a break, I think a half hour in, to do about a 15-minute presentation to just talk about the petitions that have come in and all of the letters and emails to try to halt or delay the process. But for the most part, I felt like if people walked through all of the information, it told a really good story. And then by the end, the models that the consultants drafted up really reflected a lot of the community input, and how they address the height was kind of the last model of just showing, here are things at 3 stories on France, and then this is what it could look like if it's stepped back for 4 stories. So it only showed the difference of 3 and 4 stories. They didn't push it any higher than that. And they had, a 3-dimensional model up on a screen to kind of twist and turn around, and it really helped, I don't know, at least me and probably anyone else looking at it, the possibilities with a totally revitalized area, and I think people were pretty excited. There's definitely people that are still in opposition of much change, but I think as you could see, to get the positive things we want to see in that area, these other things kind of have to happen in tandem. You got it?
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add. I think that's accurate.
Great, that's great to hear.
People were really engaged.
Yeah.
And we weren't there till like 10, 11.
Yeah.
Most people were kind of out of there by 9, so it went well.
Cool.
And I guess going forward, you know, we're waiting for the input and the findings from the consultant team, and then I think we'll reflect on those, and they'll start their draft process for us to kind of work through. But there's no further public community meeting except for a public hearing before us and a public hearing before the council.
Wow, great.
I think the small area group will meet once or twice again, but
Okay.
no big
Cool.
ones.
Yeah, those models, that's great. Is that stuff on our website too that people can see?
I don't believe that anything
graphics.
from last week's meeting is there yet.
But it will be. Okay, cool. Thank you. Thank you both. So do you have an update on 70th and Cahill?
Yes, the 70th and Cahill have met twice as a committee, and we're just in getting, familiar with everybody and kind of working on what we like and don't like, about the area. And people have been given homework, and I think the pace will start picking up. We have 2 meetings in November, and I believe a early December date for the first community outreach, So I think we're getting into more of the heavy lifting, So, and it's a great committee. We've got a really nice balance and range of expertise, so it's exciting. Good.
Jerry, I just had a question for your community meeting. Have you guys discussed, I guess, how you're planning to notify everyone? I know there's the city kind of minimum, and whether the consultants stick to it. I just say that because one thing we would have done differently is do mailings just for that first one, because some people close to the area didn't really know about it and they're not online. And we wouldn't have done it for all of them, but it would have been helpful, maybe, within 500 feet of that small area, to do direct mailers to the residents.
That's a good idea. I think that's sort of on our one of those items about our communication plan.
Okay.
And yeah, there's been initial discussions about that, but yeah.
I am starting work with the consultants on the economic development section in 2 weeks. I think I have a meeting with Bill and Janet King, who's the main consultant on the economic development side. So I literally have no idea what that means. I'll tell you as soon as I know more. No, it's the overall plan for the comp plan. There's a separate section just on economic development, and somehow I got volunteered to do that.
And there's a little bit of a focus on that industrial park.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
As part of it, so.
Good. That's a good appointment. All right. Are we done?
I do have one more.
Oh, sure.
The variance that you all reviewed, the 1-foot variance at the last meeting, it was recommended, or it was approved by the commission. We did have an appeal on that. That will go to the city council on November 8th. One of the neighbors appealed.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
Is there a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you.